help expand the scope of access to justice, particularly to those people who are indigent in the society. And as has been explained, this is one area that government needs to coordinate. Already there are institutions of government that are coordinating it, the Legal Aid Council, and of course we are happy that the Office of the Vice President is particularly concerned about this area, which is why that step-up meeting was put together. More areas continue to unfold in our legal community in Nigeria, and you can trust that the scale will be on top of all these issues in the days to come. We'll see you again.
I see the wisdom in your eyes, Mama, and I feel the courage in your heart. You carry strength in your walk, Papa, and compassion in your touch. I see the love in your smile, my sister, and I hear the truth when you talk. You are a winner with your brain, my brother, and a healer with your soul. I see the future in your hands, Niger, when you register and vote. We get power inside us, my friend, but no be power for our fists. This is not power of how to use our head and come together. So stand up. Make we not sit down and look. To Baba say so.
No sit down look.
No sit down look.
No sit down look.
Make una no sit down look, oh.
The Federal Ministry of Science and Technology and the Federal Institute of Industrial Research, OSHUD, in collaboration with Lashan Links Communication Limited, invites top government functionaries, captain of industries, media practitioners and entrepreneurs to the unveiling of housemates and state ambassadors of the African First Industrial TV reality show, Firo Out, on Sunday the 27th of October 2018 at Protea Hotel, Ikeja, 42/44 Isaac John Street, GRA, Ikeja. Time 2 p.m. For more information, please visit our website at www.firohouse.tv. Attendance is strictly by invitation.
issues in the sports sector remain one of the most debated among Nigerians due to the passion, followership, government involvement, impact on Nigeria's external image and our national life in the sports parliament. The NTA offers Nigerians deep views on issues with experts in the sports sector, offering in-depth analysis, hindsight, insight and foresight towards elevating Nigerian sports to the zenith on the floor of the sports parliament.
The benefits that accrued in school sports, it is the bedrock of any nation.
A few Nigerians wanted the status quo to continue. So I don't think we should put all Nigerians and say Nigerians don't follow the trend, because the smart ones, we are following the trend.
The National Sports Lottery Fund, shrouded in secrecy.
The fact that the Super Eagles played an NTA, not only NTA, no Nigerian broadcaster, in fact no broadcaster anywhere in the world from our records was able to bring that match. It's a matter of concern.
Issa Hayatu was president for 29 years. He lost the election in Addis, and that's it. He's gone.
Sports Parliament, a unique platform for sports discussions, showing live on the NTA Thursdays at 11 p.m. Keep a date with the parliamentarians.
Your eyes have it.
President Buhari canvasses for regional public assets as Seme-Krake joint border post becomes operational.
The objective is to increase the competitiveness and efficiency of the main transport corridors in West Africa.
Federal government launches trader money scheme in Bauchi, which states commitment to empower the downtrodden in society.
2019 general elections will not affect economic recovery and growth plan, Minister of Finance assures.
And on Good Morning Nigeria today, we discuss ways of curbing the trend of violence in the country. All right, President Muhammadu Buhari earlier in the week described as worrisome the frequent resort to bloodshed by Nigerians over misunderstandings which could otherwise be resolved peacefully.
You're right, Kingsley, absolutely right. And the president was responding to the latest communal violence in Kasuwa Magani in Kaduna State, which claimed 55 lives. President Buhari did not mince words in condemning the trend of violence, which he describes as an ill wind that does nobody any good.
Well, Rhoda, the president, of course, said that, and I did also recall the words of the president as contained in the statement issued by his senior special assistant on media publicity, that's Malam Garba Shehu. The president on that occasion had said, no culture and no religion supports the disregard for the sanctity of life. Peaceful coexistence is necessary for the progress of any society and its well-being.
Yes, and the president was on point as a result to violence is a call to destruction. But questions are being asked by, well, many Nigerians as to how did this violence become a trend, or if you like, a tool for settling scores, which, like the president observed, could be resolved very, very peacefully.
Well, Rhoda, that curiosity is not misplaced, and as you very well know, the entire society, our community, bears the brunt of the inclination of a few to violence. Now, the aftermath of the renewed violence in Kaduna, for instance, saw the imposition of a curfew, which restricted the movement of persons as well as business activities.
And yes, Kingsley, thankfully, the initial dawn to dusk curfew has been relaxed and reviewed to certain hours in parts of Kaduna. Just as the House of Representatives has also called for investigations into the unrest, which led to wanton destruction of lives and properties. As
we all may recall, at some point, the conflict in terms of sectarian conflict or otherwise communal clashes, we had them in Benue, then Zamfara, and then Plateau, and now in Kaduna. Where is next? However, the wish is that the violence will not continue to spread. Plus, of course, the issues of banditry. But our focus today is on communal strife and violence.
Well, you're right, Kingsley. That's what we're actually looking at today, taking time to look at, what could be the cause of, such violence. Couldn't issues when they come up like that, couldn't, people settle them in other ways rather than resorting to violence? A lot of lives have been lost, properties, people are displaced.
There's no doubt about that. And in particular, also, what are the early warning signs? And what proactive measures can the security agencies adopt to forestall the kind of conflicts that we are seeing? Plus, also community leaders and other key influencers in the various places. And why would any disagreement of any variety result in the loss of lives? As at the last count, of course, some 55 persons were reported to have been killed in Kaduna alone.
In just a couple of days.
That's right.
Well, curbing the trend of violence is our focus on Good Morning Nigeria today. I'm Rhoda and I'm welcoming you to the program. And as always, we're reaching you live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority, Africa's largest network. And we're reaching you from the capital city, from our headquarters studios here in Abuja.
I'm Kingsley Osadolo. I also join my colleague Rhoda in welcoming you to the program, in the course of which we shall have regular complimentary segments. And these, of course, include newspaper review, business, sports, foreign, and others. But first, let's take the morning news with our other colleague, Claire Chichi Adelabu Adunrazak.
You take me out of my Kingsley, not to you. All right, now that you talked about violence, most times we, look at the immediate perpetrators, but they also need to look at those who instigate the violence, and also begin to address those people. I think it's when we begin to, make some arrests and,
persecution.
Allow the law to take its course.
Precisely,
right,
then we'll be getting somewhere. But let's quickly take the news now, and we're beginning with the ECOWAS flagship project, talking about the Seme-Karaki joint border post along the international boundary between Nigeria and the Republic of Benin, which is now operational. Now, at its inauguration and formal handover ceremony, President Muhammadu Buhari described the ECOWAS flagship project as a symbol of integration and good example of regional public assets with tremendous spillover benefits.
I would therefore like to reassure you that Nigeria is committed to the operationalization of the joint border post and will work closely with the Republic of Benin to ensure the success of this set of border formalities.
And Vice President Professor Yemi Osinbajo has again stated that the Buhari administration is committed to improve and grow the economy by empowering the downtrodden in the society. Now, that was at the launching of the Trader Money scheme in Bauchi.
Our sole aim is to make sure that all of you young men and women are occupied in your business or you are employed one way or the other. Our focus from the beginning of our administration is that there must be enough jobs, enough resources for young men and women to be able to do their work and to contribute their quota to Nigeria.
And the federal government is assuring Nigerians that the 2019 general elections will not affect its commitment to deliver on the Economic Recovery and Growth Plan, ERGP. Minister of Finance Zainab Ahmed, speaking as a panelist on sustainable economic opportunities at the Nigeria Economic Summit, says that government is aware of the sense of urgency in the implementation of policies to grow the economy.
The President has asked some of us to just keep our eye on the ball, to focus on delivering on the ERGP and delivering on the goals and targets that are set.
I think it's important that the elections must enable us to have a discussion around so what next.
And for legislative matters, the Senate has passed the Electoral Act Amendment Bill 2018. The bill has been denied assent by President Muhammadu Buhari thrice for reasons of irregularities and draft issues.
Where a smart card reader deployed for accreditation of voters failed to function in any polling unit and a fresh card reader is not deployed 3 hours before the close of the election in that unit, then the election shall not hold but be rescheduled and conducted within 24 hours thereafter.
Both parties, both the APC and the PDP, I'm sure we're interested in a very transparent election.
In the meantime, the House of Representatives has also resolved to, as a matter of urgent public importance, set up an ad hoc committee to investigate the crisis that led to the suspension of the Executive Secretary of the National Health Insurance Scheme, NHIS, Professor Usman Yusuf, by the Governing Board.
On which the hope of our universal health delivery is hinged.
If the Governing Council does not have the power to appoint Executive New Secretary, the question is, do they not have the power to suspend him?
And the 48th Auditors General Conference has opened with a mandate on all the 3 levels of government to strictly ensure implementation of audit reports to ensure transparency and accountability in governance. Auditor General of the Federation, Anthony Ayine, stated this at the opening of the conference here in Abuja.
We are examining and see what value addition as Auditors General are we making to the system.
That has been our job, to ensure accountability and probity.
And turning to media practitioners who have expressed total support for the National Broadcasting Commission as it strives to make Nigeria a force to reckon with in the world of broadcasting. Now, this came to the fore at the opening of the 2018 Africa's Investment Platform for Broadcast Content and Technology, Africast, in Abuja.
We will continue to support the NBC and other stakeholders in this venture because, among other things, it reinforces Nigeria's position as a giant in Africa.
And finally, the 24-hour curfew initially imposed on Kaduna Metropolis and its environs has been relaxed to enable residents restock on essential needs.
The Security Council regrets the inconvenience to residents, but the obligation to secure lives and property necessitates an uncompromising approach. Government will continue to monitor the situation and make further announcements based on the guidance of the security agencies.
And those are the top stories for this morning. You can watch more news at 10 o'clock. That's the news at 10. For now, don't go away. Kingsley and Rhoda will be back after this break.
Unemployment, notably youth unemployment, features strongly in our party's manifesto. We intend to attack the problem frontally through revival of agriculture.
The 30K is going a long way.
Actually, I bought an acre of land for 60K like 2012, and presently I have a cassava farm and a yam farm.
Reorganized, trained, and fully equipped, we are the new improved Nigeria Police Force. We fight crime, we bust syndicates. Whatever the crime, wherever the hideout, the Nigeria Police Force will get you busted. Stop kidnapping, armed robbery, murder, pipeline vandalism, and other criminal activities. Be productive. Be security conscious. Join the police force to secure your life and property. This message is from the Nigeria Police Force Public Relations Department.
Your favorite Maggi star now wears a new look. Its great taste and quality still remain the same. With Maggi, every woman is a star.
Every new day deserves a great taste. For a great start with Nescafe 3-in-1. It all starts with a Nescafe.
What's up?
His friends didn't come.
Hey, let's practice.
But you're going out.
Don't worry about me.
Nothing satisfies a mother more than seeing a child grow up. But I know as he sweats, he'll face the risk of germs which can cause skin irritation.
That's why you need the new best ever Dettol Cool. Its new advanced formulation with extra menthol protects from up to 100 illness-causing germs and gives your family icy cool freshness.
Growing up needs Dettol protection.
Kehinde suffers from indigestion. His twin Taiyi suffers from heartburn. Sometimes it's the other way around, or both. That's why they use Gaviscon Double Action. It soothes within 3 minutes and lasts for up to 4 hours. For double relief from heartburn and indigestion, Gaviscon Double Action.
NTA Television College, Jos, an affiliate of Ahmadu Bello University Zaria, is organizing a 2-week course in Archival Management System of Broadcast Media. Date, 5th to 16th November 2018. Venue, NTA Television College, Rayfield, Jos. Course fee, 100,000 Naira per participant. Accommodation inclusive. The course will equip participants with the techniques of automating recordings, cataloging, and analyzing media for storage and productions. Come and take advantage of this course to sharpen your skills in maintaining, conserving, and utilizing the archival system. For more information, please contact us on the following numbers: 0806 980 9807, 0803 314 4383. TV College Jos, training you to be the best you want to be.
All right, so welcome back, and it's still Good Morning Nigeria. Now it's time to update you in the world of business as Nigeria's educational sector receives a boost with the signing of a memorandum of understanding between Nigeria's Economic Summit Group and the National Universities Commission. Now let's join Kunle Adeye for details of this on Business News.
The 25-year Memorandum of Understanding is for the introduction of skills in the country's university education curriculum. The summit also bets the adoption of e-learning in early education as part of innovation to develop Nigeria's knowledge economy. Chairman of the Nigeria Economic Summit Group, Asue Igodalo, who, along with other officials, briefed the media at the end of the summit, also commended the anti-corruption stance of the present administration.
The commitment of this government to fighting corruption is not in doubt.
But there are many facets and many, we call it multidimensional. And if you listen to the Vice President yesterday, he said the harder you fight, the harder corruption fights back. So what I can assure you is that from our own interaction with this government and with the government from the very top, is that their focus on fighting corruption is not in doubt.
In another development, Nigeria has been ranked as the 7th largest integrated market in the world. The United States ambassador to Nigeria, Mr. William Symington, said this in Ilorin while delivering a lecture on citizen leadership and the link between economic diversity and economic good governance. The diplomat said Nigeria has abundant human and natural resources, making it more endowed than most countries. And now we take a look at closing figures on the Nigerian Stock Exchange. With business news, I'm Kunle Adeyeye.
Thank you very much, Kunle, there for the business packet. Next for us now is a review of some of the papers we have today.
Now, Bayo Toby is here again this morning to give us more insight and, of course, more depth into our review this morning. Bayo, good morning.
Good morning, Ruga. Good morning, Kingsley, and good morning, Nigeria.
All right, let's begin with the Daily Sun this morning. On the Daily Sun, just beside the nameplate, that's the front page now, just beside the nameplate, it says, "Why I ignored council suspension, NHIS scribe." And the lead story on the Daily Sun this morning says, "Presidential poll, NAS pegs campaign funding at 5 billion naira. National Assembly pegs campaign funding at 5 billion naira. It's the story that's on page 6. And with a rider, there's a reject manual voter accreditation. And if you go down, now let's go to the bottom of the paper, but just before that is a picture story of President Muhammadu Buhari yesterday with his Benin counterpart, President Patrice Talon, yesterday in Lagos, where they actually, during the official landing of the ECOWAS border post in Badagry, Lagos. Now, underneath that, you see accept results of 2019 polls. Gowon tells Buhari, Atiku and others. Defense Council Southeast exclusion splits senators, and Kaduna crisis compensate 2011 victims to forestall bloodshed. El-Rufai tells federal government relaxes curfew. ACF Markafi condemn killing. That's the lead story. Those are the stories trending on the front page of the Daily Sun. Inside the paper, I'll quickly take this from page 11. Inside the paper, it says Buhari won't steal public funds, says Oshibajo. He said that yesterday in Bauchi. He says Buhari won't steal public funds, says Oshibajo. And if you go down on the paper there, it says firms urge federal government to take agriculture serious. That's a story. Those are stories trending on page 11 of the Daily Sun. Kingsley.
All right. So for the Daily Trust and the New Telegraph, the lead story is also on the passage of the electoral amendment bill by the Senate. You have the story there from the Daily Trust. Daily Trust says Electoral Act, that's the kicker. Senate approves card reader for 2019 elections, pegs presidential campaign spending at 5 billion naira and governorship 1 billion naira. Now for the New Telegraph, this is how it captures it. It says Senate passes Electoral Act, that should be Electoral Bill by the way, and pegs campaign expenses with a number of riders. You can see to the left column, that's a sidebar there that highlights the spending limits for campaign purposes. Presidency, 5 billion, governorship, 1 billion, Senate, 250 million, House of Reps, 100 million, House of Assembly, 30 million, chairmanship for local government council, 30 million, and councillorship, 5 million. Now, highest individual donation put at 10 million naira. Defaulters risk jail term. National Assembly insists on card readers, and INEC officials risk 2 million naira fine over omission of party's logo. Gawan, that's former Nigerian head of state, 66 to 75. Buhari and Atiku must accept 2019 poll results. Details of those stories can be found on pages 4 and 10 of the New Telegraph. Now, above the nameplate of the New Telegraph, let's take the following stories. Pensioners demand 30,000 minimum pension. With a rider, retired police officers protest 18 months arrears and want scheme abolished. Reps approve Buhari's $82.54 million Euro bond request. And below the nameplate, you have 4 headlines there. But let's take 2 of them. It says Benue, it comes with a kicker. Professor commits suicide at Agric University. That's at page 9 of the New Telegraph. Unfortunately, the professor was said to have taken his own life. He was a professor of biological sciences at the Federal University of Agriculture in Makurdi. His name is also indicated in the story, and the incident was said to have occurred last Friday. APC primaries. Amosun alleges plot against Buhari. That's on page 7. Mayo.
Well, let's start with the commissioning of the joint border post by the president and his brother from Benin Republic. President emphasized that the border post among West African nations is to facilitate trade in the sub-region. Particularly, the president noted that this border post, Lagos, Cotonou, Lomé, Accra, Abidjan corridor, is accounting for over 70% of transit traffic, not only in the West African sub-region, but in the whole, is the largest in the whole continent of Africa, and it is part of the Trans-African Highway. There is a second one that links Benin to Niger, Togo, and Ghana, and the president expressed appreciation to the ECOWAS community and the European Union for providing funding for it. Now, coming back to the passage of the Electoral Act 2010, it's the 4th time it's gone to the Senate, and the Senate passed it yesterday, awaiting concurrence from the House of Representatives. Highlights of the passage was that now the usage of card reader is now backed by law. Also, there's limit that has been set for campaign expenditure that was elaborately mentioned by Kingsley earlier on. It has also identified the criteria for substituting of candidates. You recall the debacle we had in Kogi State when, unfortunately, Abubakar Audu died. Yeah. That has been taken care of. It also has provided a timeline for submission of names of candidates and the logos of political parties before campaign. Another area is that the sequence of elections, which was the grouse for which the president withheld his accent and said it was a function of INEC and not that of the National Assembly, has now been put to rest. Other things to note there is that there is a critical development now, which says that where a card reader fails to function, particularly 3 hours to the close of election, that election shall be cancelled and another one shall be held 24 hours later. So there's some positive development. At the House of Representatives, however, they concentrated on the executive request for the sum of about $82.54 million to refinance the balance of the 850 million euro bond, and this has gotten the approval of the House of Representatives. However, the executive arm raised it for the 2.78 billion from the international capital market as part of the funding for 2018 budget. The House of Representatives also advised that the executive should be very careful and curb an incremental level in borrowing.
All right, Bayo, thanks a lot. I'm sure the details of the electoral bill as passed by the Senate will emerge subsequently once there is a publication of that bill. And then, of course, before it is forwarded to the president, I'm sure greater details will emerge. There are still a few gray areas. We were talking about a card reader not functioning 3 hours to the close of polls. It's that the election in the affected polling unit would be postponed and conducted within 24 hours. But provided that if there is a tally, for instance, of the results declared in the appropriate election, and if the outcome of the suspended or postponed polls would not impact on that, then there might be no need.
Then they can go ahead and declare the results.
Yes, go ahead and declare the results. But then the issue of substituting a candidate who dies in the middle of an election, as you rightly observed with regard to late Prince Abubakar Audu of Kogi. The provisions, well as published, at least in the reports, do not appear sufficiently clear enough, as I said, but I'm sure when the details emerge, once you have a gazetted copy of the bill, then it will be a lot easier to make a comment on those aspects. Because if you're talking about replacing a candidate within a specified period of time, now, you see, if you are conducting, say, a presidential election, or a governorship election, there are two persons who are involved. It cannot stand on one leg. So you have a candidate, and you have a running mate. So when you say you are conducting a fresh election, what happens to the running mate of the candidate, who passes away in the course of the election? What happens if you now connect with the candidate, with the running mate to the late deceased candidate, also be the running mate to the other one, or it should not be the choice of the political party? So these are some of the areas that, of course, will be clarified once the details are published.
In fact, the bill is also awaiting concurrence at the House of Representatives, and I'm sure some of these grey areas will be taken care of before they do the concurrence and then send it to the president for accent.
All right, but let's return to the Daily Trust newspaper. The Daily Trust newspaper, we earlier took the lead story, which is on the electoral amendment bill, as we just discussed that. But below the nameplate, there are 3 headlines there. One of them we had also taken. It says, Gawan tells Buhari, Atiku, and others to accept outcome of 2019 polls. That's page 6. Shonekon, not dead, Ogun government and Alake say. Chief N.S. Shonekon was the head of the interim government, I recall. And that was in 1993, following the June 12 crisis. He was the former chieftain also of UAC. Shonekon, not dead, Ogun's government and Alake say. Kaduna crisis, residents get respite as 22 confirmed dead. Page 4.
Talking about the Kaduna crisis, sadly, the curfew is still on. However, yesterday, they had a respite. The government lifted the curfew between 1 p.m. and 5 p.m. to enable residents replenish their stock in their homes. However, for the Kaduna metropolis, the 24-hour curfew is back on. And those commuters who are passing through Kaduna now have the benefit of escorts to pass through the city. However, in the outskirts, in the area of Kaswa Magani and Kajuru area, the curfew is now from dusk to dawn. So there's been some, at least, development, improvement in the outskirts. However, Kaduna metropolis is still very tense.
All right, but those are some of the issues we'll be looking at today in the course of the program. But very quickly, let's take a look at the Punch newspaper. On the Punch inside page, page 12, that's what we're looking at now. Looters list not a violation of named person's right. Looters list not a violation of named person's right, says court. And below you'd see NHIS crisis, reps to summon minister, ES and council chair. Very quickly to the Nigerian Pilot, inside page of the Nigerian Pilot. On page 11, it says, ban food containing trans fatty acid. Enemy urges federal government. And there's a story, a sad one that has been trending for some days now. Lecturer and son rape minor to death and abscond. All right, Bayo, let's quickly take a look at this.
Well, quickly, there's one other story that probably will have missed your attention. That is the chairman, the acting chairman of the Economic Financial Crime Commission, Ibrahim Magu, has said that I've been fighting corruption even within the FCC. And he said that some staff of the commission have been found wanting in the area of corruption. Some of them have been charged, investigated, and are awaiting prosecuting. Others have actually been sentenced to jail terms. And it was during a session in Gombe where they were trying to review their activities. And attention was drawn also by the participant to the EFCC to look at money politics, where huge sums are spent by delegates to buy votes. They also advise that attention should be paid to the minimum wage as a measure of reducing tendencies towards corruption. They talked also about the execution of recommended loot. How are the recommended loot recovered? How is it treated? Investigation were also called for. Alleged prosecution of opposition and high tariff by electricity generation agencies.
All right, Bayo, thanks a lot. Just before we take the editorial, which is from the New Telegraph at page 15, it is on ending the perennial mayhem in Plateau State. Rhoda read a story from the Nigerian pilot with regard for a call on the ban of foods containing fatty acids. Now, this story, well, I mean, it was on the news on television. The Nigerian customs seized some contraband, and amongst the items recovered from the contraband, stew.
Egusi soup from China. I found it worrisome because I'm like, how could stew be coming from China? Stew.
Egusi
already
soup
made
from
stew.
China.
So, but who? Let's put it this way. People will call it gravy, but we'll call it stew.
Yes.
So Nigeria and Nigerians are the original makers of stew. So why are you importing that or smuggling it in from China?
Anything goes.
I mean, it says egusi. Maybe the next thing will pound yam, prepared. All right, let's take a look at the editorial from the New Telegraph, ending the perennial Plateau mayhem. That's page 15. And the editorial begins. If there's any lesson derivable from the perennial killings on the Plateau in the past 2 decades, it is government's failure to implement successive reports on the carnage and punish culprits. The government's inaction has, however, emboldened the perpetrators, thereby enthroning the culture of impunity. And the editorial continues, says that we all call for the immediate and courageous implementation of the white paper on the crisis in order to stop this impunity once and for all.
It's very sad. The editorial is highlighting the perennial mayhem on the Plateau. There's a parallel here. Incidentally, I've had the opportunity of living both in Kaduna and Jos, cities that are cosmopolitan and where people from different parts of the country have found those cities as melting pots and have lived peacefully. But in the recent years, as far back as 2001, those two cities have become divided because of violence. And this editorial is highlighting the consequences, particularly with Plateau. The editorial highlights the fact that it started about 2001, and even then, when Justice Nikki Toby Commission was instituted, it makes strong recommendations, but those recommendations have never been implemented. In 2004, a state of emergency was declared, the governor was removed, a military administrator was appointed in temporary. There were recommendations that were also made. Nothing was done. In 2010, there was the same outburst, following the one that occurred in 2008, almost becoming a 4-year cycle. During the tenure of President Goodluck Jonathan, the late Solomon La was the chairman of one of the panels, and it made far-reaching recommendations. And they are asserting, the editorial is asserting that criminologists say that when there's a crime in a community and axe fails to fall on those who committed it, the tendency is that the criminals get bolstered and impunity continues. And therefore, it is recommending that we should go back to those white papers on all the conflicts in that Jos area and implement the recommendations. By so doing, we'll be able to stem the reoccurrence of the violence in those two cities. Sadly, Plateau has lost its innocence. It used to be known as the home of peace.
That's right. So let's hope that peace returns soonest to that location. Right, we didn't have the opportunity of discussing it. Let me just mention this in passing. It's a story from the courts. That's the High Court of the Federal Capital Territory, ruling that the looters list published was not a violation of the rights of the persons who have been named on the list. Now, this is very significant. It has to do, that right has to do with the presumption of innocence.
Yes.
Presumption of innocence. Yes, that's the right that is.
But the publication was based on an NGO going to court and directing that based on the Freedom of Information Act, the list should be published.
It should be published, yeah, but it has to do with the jurisprudence of what we call Chapter 4 jurisprudence, that your right is not your right to presumption of innocence is not deemed to have been violated if a looters list is published. But it would be otherwise, of course, if your name wasn't supposed to be there, then your recourse might lie in an action for defamation.
All right, sir, that's the much we can take this morning on our newspaper review segment. Bayo, thank you very much.
Thank you.
See you again tomorrow morning.
All right, then tomorrow will be another day.
All right, if you've just joined us, you're still watching Good Morning Nigeria. We'll take a break now, and when we come back, our item for discussion this morning is curbing the trend of violence across the country, with a peg also looking at the Kaduna crisis. We'll be back in just a moment.
Hate speech is not a joke. It incites genocide and crimes against humanity. Most of Africa's civil wars are caused by hate speech from one tribe against another. We don't want it here. The Nigerian government stands firm against hate speech.
Under no conditions whatsoever should we tolerate or excuse or justify hate speech or hateful conduct of any kind, especially where such is illegal.
There is no doubt that the resurgent push for separatism, as well as the rising cases of ethnic and religious disharmony, are all traceable to the growing phenomenon of hate speech.
One nation bound in freedom, peace and unity.
Nigeria, one nation, one people.
This is a public service announcement brought to you by NTA.
Can you write? First Entertainment Ideas Concept, in conjunction with National Commission for Museum and Monuments, presents Latin American Motorcycle Association Rediscover Nigeria Tour. Touring Nigerian Museum and Heritage Sites in 13 states and 13 days from the 23rd of October 2018. Chief Host, Honorable Minister for Information, Arts and Culture, Lai Mohammed. For sponsorship details, call Ernest on 090-3456-4388. Godwin 080-3701-5237. Uzoma 080-2980-0549. Salong 080-3225-0153. Umo 080-9440-9719. Lama, touring to rediscover.
Your favorite Maggi star now wears a new look. Its great taste and quality still remain the same. With Maggi, every woman is a star.
When I was a little girl, I loved spending time with Mum and Grandma cleaning the house. I was so excited to sing in the choir. And your shirts are always so white. I knew what Mum's secret was. Today, I'm a modern woman that still trusts the secrets passed down to me. It's Jik, of course. The original trusted bleach, which can be used all around your house for amazing results.
Shh, it's our little secret.
It's no secret. It's Jik's best ever extra whitening power. Just Jik it.
These days, people get their news and information from more media sources than ever before. Some of the news and information given are fake, unverified, doctored and manufactured to create confusion, stir disaffection and cause disunity. Before you believe or share any news, ask yourself, is this real? Is it from a credible source? Is it verified or verifiable? Fake news is dangerous, whether you do it for fun or for political gains. Real people can get hurt. Fake news, don't create it, don't spread it.
This is a public service announcement from NTA.
Madam. Brought us as usual.
As usual. You have no problem.
For the three put.
You are welcome, sir.
As usual. Yeah. I was.
You take that one. You take that one. You don't understand. We want Nigerian homegrown rice. Finish. You don't have.
Join the rice revolution today.
No other rice that tastes like Nigerian rice.
Are you sorry? That's the Nigerian rice we are talking about. Chocolate made in Nigerian rice. Healthy food. I'm going to bring Mrs. Mobo to come to chocolate rice of made in Nigeria here. And see how it are made.
Correct.
And how they are cook it.
Correct.
Homegrown rice are good for your health. It boosts our economy and give employment to our people.
This message is brought to you by the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture. Fake news which is shared for malicious purposes is a danger to our peace and security in Nigeria. Misinformation as fake news is a serious threat to our hard-earned democracy and promotes hatred and misunderstanding between our communities. We are all responsible for stopping the spread of fake news in its tracks. So, always check the source and credibility of any news item. Say no to fake news. This message is brought to you by the Federal Ministry of Information.
All right, welcome back. But if you just tune in, it's Good Morning Nigeria, and we are reaching you live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. How to curb incessant violence in the country is our subject for conversation this morning against the background of the latest flare-up in Kaduna State. Let's take this background out from our correspondent, Serafina Okun, as a prompt for that conversation.
In recent times, Nigeria has been experiencing a trend of violence from pockets of insurgency to communal clashes, the farmers-herders conflict, religious intolerance, among other forms of conflict. From Benue to Plateau, Zamfara, and lately Kaduna, the trend of violence has been alarming, leaving in its trail wanton destruction of lives and property. The scenario have left many wondering if the value of human life and dignity has been lost on those who perpetrate such acts of violence. The trend has also left feelings of insecurity, fear, and suspicion among the people, especially those in the affected areas. The fact that Nigerians are naturally peace-loving people who canvass unity in diversity, peaceful coexistence and tolerance at every opportunity also stir up curiosity about the latest penchants for violence. There is no gainsaying the fact that peace and safety are indispensable conditions for growth, development and stability of any society. What measures are therefore required to reverse the trend of violence in the country? To what extent can intelligence gathering curb communal clashes? And how can frayed nerves be calmed to prevent reprisals? These and more will be deliberated by guests on the program Good Morning Nigeria in a moment.
All right, thank you very much, Sarafina Okon, for that background report, which is a prompt for our discussion this morning on curbing the trend of incessant violence in parts of the country. Now, joining us in the studio to discuss this is Major General Ahmed Tijani Jibri. He is a former Director of Military Intelligence. General, thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you very much for having me.
All right, a regular on the program when we have issues like this is our security expert. He is Kabiru Adamu. He's a security risk management expert. Kabiru Adamu, it's good to have you join us again this morning.
It's my pleasure to be here.
And also joining us here is Dr. Joseph Ochugo. He is a Chief Research Fellow at the Institute for Peace and Conflict Resolution. Dr. Joseph, good morning and welcome to Good Morning Nigeria.
Good morning, Nigeria.
We have from our Port Harcourt studio Dr. Steve Wardu. He is a senior lecturer, Department of Sociology at the University of Port Harcourt. Doc, good morning and thank you for joining us this morning on the program.
Thank you. Good morning, Nigerians.
Hopefully, we would also have a representative of the Nigerian police force join us much later in the discussion for an update on what's happening there. But then, just yesterday, we're aware that the curfew has been relaxed in some parts of Kaduna. The residents were allowed to go out to restock for some hours. And of course, hopefully later we'll have a representative of the force to actually update us on what the situation is right now on ground.
All right, Rhoda, thank you very much. So let's begin the conversation straight straight away with the guests that we have in the studios as well as at our Port Harcourt Network Center. Let's begin with General Ahmed Tijani Jibrin, the former director of the Directorate of Military Intelligence. General Jibrin, some persons are wondering how a country can so regularly bury its citizens on account of wanton violence in different parts of the country, the latest being Kaduna. What's your reading of the situation?
Well, this problem is a global phenomenon. It's not only in Nigeria, in many other countries in Africa and in the world. These ethno-religious crises happen and lives are lost. We are having our own, and the reasons are not far-fetched. The problem with Nigeria is that when crises occur and those who perpetrate it are identified, duly identified, but nothing happens to them. And if people commit atrocities and are allowed to roam the streets freely with impunity, it's an encouragement for other people to do the same thing. So one major issue is the fact that we have identified some people who are actually sponsoring, and some of them even actively participated in this crisis, but nothing happened to them. So if we continue to have this type of situation, there's no doubt that others and the youth will follow. Again, we have witnessed the breakdown of the traditional intelligence and early warning system deteriorating over the years. In the past, our world leaders are a very good source of intelligence for the security agencies. They are also people that, in their own right, mediate and ensure that crises do not boomerang to the public notice. But unfortunately, what we have right now, some of the crises are being perpetrated by the same leaders. Things happen by their very eyes, but they don't do anything. We have also have to blame some parents, because when you are in the house and you hear your child is going out to go and kill, commit arson and do things like that that will bring unrest in the country, you don't stop him. Instead, you allow him. Some of the parents even join. So the breakdown of this traditional early warning system is a very serious contributory factor to all these crises that we are witnessing in the country.
All right, thank you very much, General Ahmed Jibrin. Let's bring in now Kabir Adamu. Kabir Adamu, what's your reading of the situation? General Jibrin begins with a general statement that, look, this is a global phenomenon, but some persons might argue, if you look around our neighbors, it isn't as if we're having frequent reports of this kind of bloodletting.
Yeah, I would just like us to disaggregate the issues. What you have in the Northeast, as an example, is very different from what you have in the Middle Belt or Central, North Central Nigeria. So I think it's important to make that point. Each location has its peculiar features, even though across the locations there are certain common features that will account for. So maybe if I would mention in these North Central states, what has come out clearly is what I would describe as distrust between communities, sometimes divided by religion or ethnicity. It's a very important factor. And then very unfortunately, distrust between the communities and the government. A good example I'll give yesterday, after the relaxation of the curfew by the Kaduna state government, some certain members of the community came out to protest that the selective relaxation did not favor their community. And we picked up reports of youths actually stoning security forces in some of those communities. So a clear example of distrust between communities. Religious intolerance is also a huge factor. Proliferation of arms within our community is also a feature that cuts across almost all the security, insecurity challenges that we have. Political mischief, and in this regard, I'm quoting some of the previous reports that have been, submitted after some of this crisis. It's not surprising that in the lead up to the 2019 elections, we're seeing a spike
in these challenges in some locations. Plateau State is an example. Of course, even the Northeast is another example. Then Kaduna is also a very good example to cite. Youth restiveness, which the General has mentioned, is something I also want to harp on. And then, of course, unemployment. Some figures have cited 40 million Nigerians that are out of job. Then the failure of the criminal justice system. The General has mentioned that to punish offenders. In this regard, it's a very complex issue, but one thing that has come out clearly is the inability of our security forces to gather evidence in support of the prosecution of offenders. No matter how good you are in speaking as a lawyer, if you go to court and you don't submit evidence that this person is actually guilty, it will be very, very difficult to punish the suspect. So clearly, we've seen instances of that across all the federation.
All right, Dr. Joseph Ochubo, do you think there are other dimensions to it? Because the General and Kabiru Adamu have listed up about 8 or 7, reasons why we're seeing what we're seeing now: breakdown of law and order, distrust between communities and government. We're also looking at, breakdown of early warning signs. We're looking at failure of the criminal justice system. What's your take on this?
Thank you very much. I think basically, if we want to diagnose violence in a society, it's important that we look at violence from the structural violence dimension and the direct violence dimension. What has been of concern is the direct violence, that is the manifestations of violence. But when you have a society where there are structural fault lines that tends to promote violence, and when I mean structural violence, you don't see it, you don't feel it, in terms of you are not caught, you are not knifed, you are not shot, but the system, to a very large extent, puts you in a situation whereby you feel some kind of emotional violence and all that. Then it is important for us to begin to situate, because if we try to look at solutions, we must look at the structural aspect of violence in Nigeria and then the direct violence aspect in Nigeria. The reason being that when you have a system that tends to promote some level of discrimination, which is against our constitution, chapter 2 of our constitution, particularly subsection 14 or 15, that says there is need for diversity. So if our diversity management systems are not really working, then we're in trouble. And I'm saying this because criminals have become much more smarter than our state institutions. And what they've done is to use our identity fault line to generate violence on us. It's also instructive as well to say that in Nigeria, if you're looking at violence and to understand the way violence operates and works in Nigeria, there is a connection between political violence, criminal violence, and ethno-religious violence. It's the same characters that perpetuate all these things. So, in essence, criminals amongst us have become much more smarter. And that is why you find our security military system, reacting when it happens. It therefore means that if we want to begin to try to propagate issues around solutions, to look for solutions, then we have to begin to look at the structural dimensions and the processes of our socializations. At what point has Nigeria become so socialized in terms of violence? And if we are looking for solutions, how do we begin to desocialize these processes? And that is why these issues around youth unemployment, and several other issues that ordinarily would not have happened. For example, I just use a typical example. What had triggered the Kaduna crisis? We all heard that in Mageni, there was a boy who stole, and some group of people caught him and started beating him. And they beat him, and his gangs, came up, and then it escalated, and it became much more communal conflict, and we lost close to 50-something lives in that place. Look at it carefully. If the citizens were socialized, for example, that if you catch a thief, either take him to a Sharia court or to a criminal court, that incident wouldn't have happened. Take him to the police station, and then the police will charge him. So there is this process of socialization that is just not working. And until we get it to work, it really can happen. There is a particular violence incident, criminal violence, that I need to mention, so that we can really get the way and manner we've really reversed in terms of our national peace and harmony. A young man dropped his younger brother at a motor park somewhere in Lagos, counted 12,000, gave to him, and left. And then some gangsters saw when that money was given to the boy. And before you know, one of them went to take the money from the boy. Once the boy shouted, "Oli," his gang cycled him and burnt him alive. So what I'm trying to say is that there is this violence component that the criminals have become master of. Ordinarily, the military are the master of violence. That is to say, they have the monopoly of the control of the instrument of violence, as well as the police. But when we have non-state armed actors that are becoming much more smarter than the systems, and then they are having collaborators within the political elites and the bureaucratic elites, then we will sure have a problem in our hands. And we really have to tell ourselves the hard truths, and then we'll face it head on in terms of solution provision. Otherwise, we're in a long jam.
Yeah, thank you very much, Dr. Ochogu. You cited two examples. Now, at all times, the Nigerian Television Authority is for law and order. But I just want to use this to illustrate what I'm about to say now, to back up the question I'm going to ask you, for you to further explain. Say what happened in Kaduna. Now, all right, jungle justice, a young man apprehended, and once the jungle justice was being meted out on him, his fellow gangsters decided to react, and that escalated into the conflict that has cost, tens of lives. In Lagos, you also cited the example, but in Lagos, was there a flare-up of the violence? And from time to time, there are instances of jungle justice in Lagos. I mean, that's the so-called necklace, with tires and so on and so forth. Again, as I said, this is not to justify it. But how do you explain that?
Yeah, I think basically that is the structural aspect that I've just spoken about, the structural violence aspect that is not dealt with. In Kaduna, for example, there are identity crises. Issues, identity crisis over religion, over ethnicity, over traditional rulership, over land. And those issues have not been dealt with. And when those issues are not dealt with, they are there, and then there is this ambience of relative peace, and you think that there is a peace. And then something happens, like this example that we just gave, and then what it does is that it triggers it. Because all that a criminal needs to do, for example, is to commit crime and hide under identity lines. And that is why, for example, you can see cattle rustlers, for example, who are criminals. They don't promote any ethnic or religious identity. Cattle rustlers go to certain communities, rustle cows, and then it is interpreted that it is the other group that have rustled cows. And then you begin to find vengeance and all that. So in essence, what I'm trying to say is that we need to unpack these very hard realities that we are facing as a people. We have to unpack them and then begin to knit them and knit them the way they knit cap in Maiduguri area in terms of finding peace. It's a difficult process, but we need surely to do that.
All right, thank you very much, Dr. Ochogu. Let's go back to our Port Harcourt network studios, where we earlier introduced Dr. Steve Wadu, a senior lecturer in the Department of Sociology. Dr. Wadu, I think you better just take it away from the point that Dr. Ochogu left it off. Have we been, or have some persons in Nigeria been socialized into violence?
Thank you. Over the years, the country has lost its traditional and societal values. And because of that, I can categorically say that the younger generation, even members of the older generation, have been socialized into violence, into criminality against our traditional values. And it is to some extent historical, the extent to which we can begin to identify historical forces that created the situation where people have been socialized into criminality, into violence, into loss of value for life. And the question, the issues is around the concept of internal security. I agree with the general that we are at the level of it's a global phenomenon. But indeed, for us in Nigeria, it's an internal security collapse. Our internal security system, our concept of values, our concept of norms and values of society have collapsed. To that extent, I can say that we have been serially, historically socialized into violent culture. And our political culture itself is highly violent. To that extent, every other segment of society are prone to the corruption, moral corruption and socialization into violent political culture. Our political system is highly violent, and that has enabled all other forces and all individuals and persons, particularly the younger generation, to be exposed to the culture of violence. And that is where we are today.
Thank you very much.
I was just going to, Rhoda, just before, I don't know whether you have another question for Dr. Waldo. I just wanted Dr. Waldo to also elaborate further on this socialization into violence, taking a cue from the point made by General Jibrin and amplified by Kabir Adamo with regard to the weak criminal justice system that tends, therefore, to reinforce the criminal behavior. I'm wondering, Dr. Waldo, what sociological explanation could there possibly be for the persistent reinforcement of violent behavior resulting in bloodletting? It's as if, you know, these numbers just come, you know, 50 persons died, you know, 25 persons died, day in, day out. Indeed, if you look at the country's map since January and you take a tally of persons who have been killed, they will run into hundreds. And these are persons who have been killed unlawfully. So what is sociologically reinforcing this kind of violent bloodletting?
I think one of us there has said that it has to do with structure, the structure of the society, the political structure. And because everything, socialization, everything, social behavior and all that are woven around the structure of society, a structure that promotes exclusiveness, that promotes discrimination, a political structure that does not promote excellence and achievements, and all we get is that people have acquired this immediacy syndrome of how to get rich quick and how to make it only through politics, and such that what I'm trying to say is that the structure of society determines what other sociological response that people will have to issues that are woven around their livelihood. Beyond within the context of the structure, we are talking about the livelihood security of people. Because the livelihood security has fallen drastically. There are no more strengthening institutions to, buffer the response of people to normal behavior. So everything is tilted towards how to survive, how to acquire wealth, how to, predate on others. So this, the society, the structured society, is what has promoted or, contributed in, heightening this kind of non-value for life. If we go by the situation that's happening in Nigeria, we are asking this question is, why are Nigerians killing Nigerians? We are not at war with any other society. We are not at war with our neighbors. It is just Nigerians killing Nigerians. And I think that I go with the other speaker who, built it around the problem of the social structure of society. So sociologically, people are influenced by the dominant values in society, by the dominant structure. And because the structure we have promotes poverty, it promotes ignorance, it promotes exclusion. And to that extent, the younger generation and even those who try to be normal in this kind of insane society are forced to begin to look at the violent behavior as the only option. It manifests in a lot of ways. It manifests in aggressive behavior. It manifests even in terms of at the level of the family. People have been worked up to the extent to which, because the structure has blocked the normal ways of survival, people are forced to resort to other ways that are considered violent, and that is the problem.
Thank you very much, Dr. Wadu. Kingsley, earlier on, what I was what I wanted us to actually look at, or what I hope that we'll actually look at, it's so important that we're talking about this right now, because we're not just looking at the violence, we're looking at the source of it, what is instigating such violence. And Dr. Joseph was actually talking about the fact that people are actually feeding on our identity. People are feeding on, there's an identity crisis. People are actually feeding on religious divides, ethnic divides, and how do we begin to ensure that all of this is being taken care of. But before we come to that, I'd like us to go to our Kaduna Network Center. Earlier on, when we introduced our guest here in the studio, we said that we would have a representative from the Nigerian Police Force who will be speaking to us much later. Now we have him. He is the Commissioner of Police in Kaduna State, Kaduna Command. He is Ahmed Abdul Rahman. He's joining us from our Kaduna studios. CP, thank you very much for joining us this morning on the program.
Good morning.
Before we begin to look at, what instigated this round of violence, we are already aware that the curfew, which started about 2 days ago for 24 hours, was relaxed for some hours yesterday. And of course, in some parts of Kaduna, it has actually been relaxed for people to go, and shop and restock. But then what is the situation report right now as we speak in Kaduna?
The situation in Kaduna right now, as I'm talking to you, is very stable. The level of compliance with the curfew is very high, and there is no any problem right now. Peace has returned, but that is not because that the people wanted peace, but we have to sit up and control them, because there are so many unguided youths from both divides of religion and tribes that are still agitating, but we force them to, into compliance. They now remain at home, and we are doing much to engage them and their leaders, religious leaders, traditional leaders, and leaders of the society, which is ongoing right now. I'm talking to.
Say that, it is not because the people themselves actually want peace, but because you are trying to enforce peace. What do you mean by that? And if this is happening right now, what is actually fueling that? Why are the people saying, oh, we don't want peace right now, we want to still go out and do all? But then, of course, you have ensured that you have enforced peace, whether they like it or not. What is actually fueling this?
Yes, what is fueling this is because there are some leaders that are misguiding the youths and that are feeding on the situation. Especially yesterday when we met with Council of Chiefs at the instance of the state government, I spoke to their Royal Highnesses that they should talk to their people, and also especially talk to the lower chiefs who have been used by some disgruntled politicians to be instigating these youths. And also religious leaders. There are some of them that I don't know what they are gaining in trying to chip in some elements of mischief by guiding the youths to go and commit violence. We are gathering information, and we got enough. We will start picking them, and we will investigate, and those that we found wanting will be prosecuted.
Well, Commissioner of Police, still with you at the Kaduna Network Center, give us a sense of the numbers that have emerged from the mayhem in Kaduna. One, how many persons have been confirmed dead? Two, how many persons have been arrested?
The first violence that erupted in Kaswam Magani, we arrested 22 in total, and we even prosecuted them, but because of the curfew, the court did not sit. So later, when that of Kujama erupted, in all we have about 15 people now, but we have names that we are going after. Most of them have gone underground. We are doing everything possible to fish those that have been mentioned for questioning and investigation.
Well, thank you very much. The figures you gave relate to persons who have been arrested and facing prosecution while you are still on the heels of those who have hit the mattress. But how many persons have been confirmed dead?
Yes, at first we reported 55 bodies, 55 deaths that have been confirmed. And this one that erupted later, we confirmed that we have 5 deaths at the end of our operation. But yesterday, when SEMA was doing its presentation, it has an additional figure. And people are saying, why are the figures different? I think people should understand that when an operation is going on, we are doing a kind of intervention, an interim measure to bring sanity into the troubled areas. So you don't expect us to go into every house and find out who is injured, who is not, who is dead or who is not. So we will have to give the figure that we have gotten at the end of our operation. But SEMA could not have gone out if we have not returned peace to the society. So when peace has returned, they have to go into the interior and find out those that have died later. For example, it's just like a doctor in a hospital. When a patient is brought to him and he diagnosed a disease, at the end of it, he prescribed medicine. He gave the patient a bed. Who are now responsible are the nurses. When the doctor is sleeping in his house, those that were diagnosed with a disease may die later, or another symptoms of the disease that will tell them the actual real disease will emerge, and that will be diagnosed at first by the nurses. That's what they call nurses diagnosis. So having said this, NEMA came with additional figures. Those that we have taken to hospital definitely might have died later. So that was why we got the different figures. So all we knew, we have about 5 deaths that very day, and we gave the figure. Later on, the SEMA came with its own. So if you add these 5 with the 55 that we gave earlier, we have 60 deaths as far as the operation is concerned.
All right, Commissioner of Police, thank you very much. May the souls of those who have passed away rest in peace. Was the Kaduna Police Command taken by surprise by the sudden flare of violence and the fatalities resulting therefrom?
No, we're not taken by surprise. We've been on the ground. We've been doing our job. We are always on our toes. Policing is not policing a spontaneous activity. Policing must continue even when peaceful coexistence ensued. So we are not taken by surprise, and it was not a fire brigade approach. But you don't expect, while normal police duties are going under a peaceful atmosphere, you don't expect that when a criminal activity like the one that had happened erupted, suddenly you expect that police will be everywhere, especially this one that seemed to have been premeditated by some unscrupulous element of the society. So therefore, when it erupted, we quickly came into it. We spread our nets, and quickly I contacted the state governor when I saw it, that thing that happened at a point in Kaswa-Mageni, then you find out that all other segments of Kaduna have engulfed on fire, which means that it has been prepared before. So when that happened, I advised the governor, who was even not in the state, that we have to impose 24 hours curfew. And immediately the curfew was imposed, then we came in and controlled the thing, and it came to, a standstill and peace return. The Inspector General of Police also has a very much concern on Kaduna state, and he quickly sent an aircraft surveillance helicopter to me, and also later he sent special intervention forces under the Assistant Inspector General of Police Operations and Zone 7. And when investigation commences, he sent special investigation teams under a Commissioner of Police. They are all with me. Additionally, he also sent the special operational and tactical teams. So they are there. And within a short period of time, we brought this into, controllable level, and sanity returns. Not only that, we in Kaduna Command, we have a very good understanding among us, that's the security agencies. Quickly, when I informed the garrison commander that, my friend, you have to also come in so that we bring this into order. Quickly, the Brigadier General sent his troops and we deployed them alongside. Kaduna is very peaceful now. The only thing is, after a situation like this, you have to manage the post-violence period, which is full of rumors and complaints. And these are what we are managing. And you will see what we will do with those that are peddling rumors. Even them, we will not allow them. So in totality, all those that we've arrested and those that we are looking for, and I'm assuring the Nigerians that we are going to fish them out, we will want to investigate them, and we will allow the full burden of the law to bear on them severely so that it will serve as deterrence to others. Nigeria must live in peace.
All right. I was going to also ask you, that's Commissioner of Police in Kaduna State, Ahmed Abdulrahman. I'll just pick two things that you said from your comments, and I'm saying this because one of our guests earlier highlighted this, and that is the issue of breakdown of early warning sign and breakdown of intelligence. You made two comments. You said when this issue started in Kasuwa Magani, immediately it erupted, and that means that probably it is something that had been, they had been preparing for, or it had been buried. I want to ask you, did you have any intel at all? Did you have any intelligence report that, look, something like this was going to happen, or it is that it happened and then you just had to nip it in the bud? What happens to early warning signs?
Our intelligence is very, very superb. We've been doing our best. In fact, the intelligence was what led us to having the proactive measures we put in place. That was why when they found out that they could not do it alone there, they spread their nets to other areas. But don't forget that even those areas that erupted simultaneously with the actual point that this thing started, there were policemen on patrols. That was why the death toll did not even go beyond what we have gotten, because that very market is a very big market, not only in Nigeria, but in West Africa. That is Kasuwa Magani. It's a very small town, but having a very big market with a very serious economic, activities. So, as it erupted, there were more than 2,000 to 3,000 people doing their activities. It was when the market was about to close that this thing happened. So, if we were not there, then I wonder how many people could have been killed. So, our intelligence was what led us to have a minimal casualty than they plan to have.
Thank you very much, Commissioner of Police Kaduna, but we'll still keep you on set, and we'll return to you later on in the course of this conversation. Let's bring in now the former Director of Military Intelligence, Major General Ahmed Tijani Jibrin. General Jibrin, of course, you listened to the other guests, and in particular to the Commissioner of Police in charge of Kaduna State. And I'm sure some of our viewers would just be wondering, you spoke earlier about early warning signs, and then Kabir Adamu also reinforced that point. What happens? Are we seeing a failure of intelligence? Are we also seeing lack of synergy amongst the intelligence community and the security agencies? Because the Commissioner of Police has spoken. He hasn't mentioned DSS, but he's mentioned the brigade commander. He hasn't mentioned civil defense. So what is it that we can assume with regard to what led to this unfortunate death of 60 human beings?
Well, you know, there are two issues that I can think of. One is there is a lack of coordinated response from the security agencies. And secondly, there is no doubt about the fact that the the intelligence network of the security agency is not sharpened enough to be able to go down to the root of the issues. Because in the past, you used to have what they call police CIDs posing as cobblers, posing as sellers of this and that, and then also the idea of recruiting informants, functional informants that you pay. Intelligence is not cheap. You have to pay them. You can get them from among the youths. Most of them are not doing much. If they know, if they pass simple information, they will partner with a lot of resources. The market women are also there. Everything happens before their very eyes. If you recruit some informants from among them, and they tell you whatever is going to happen, they know. They can tell you because they are sure you are going to pay for it. Then even the traditional rulers who are naturally supposed to do this job without being paid, but you can get some of them as your informants and then pay them well. And you paying them, you also be training them and getting in touch with them from time to time, even when there is nothing going on. The lack of coordinated response I mentioned is the fact that we have the DSS, we have the civil defense, we have the military, we have the police, we have also the Kaduna State own security outfit with beautiful forward operation bases littered around Kaduna State, which is a very good development. I think in addition to what the Kaduna State government is doing, I know also the military has some forward operation bases in some of these flashpoint states. The police too need to do that. The police stations you have in some of the communities do not have enough policemen to respond to crisis. So problem of late response by security agencies, lack of coordinated response on their own part, and failure to subscribe to the basic intelligence mechanism that we used to do is responsible for all this. That's why you find out that many people would have died before the security agencies arrive. So, and then there is also preemptive deployment. When there is rumor, you don't joke with rumors. No smoke without fire. Do preemptive deployment. When you do that, that's why sometimes you say, we saw police and all over here. People will be wondering what is happening. But police know why they are there. So preemptive deployment should be encouraged. And then look at the way the response comes. When you go with a vehicle that breaks down on the way, when you go with maybe 5 policemen or 5 security operatives, reinforcement is not assured. So there is need for the security agencies to have functional forward operation bases that are well equipped with good vehicles and with sufficient number of personnel. And then back in their base, they should have reinforcement ready to move immediately. And then during the State Security Council meetings, there must be briefing, realistic briefing from the parts of the security agency as to what is actually impeding their ability to respond fast, their ability to operate efficiently, so that not just lip service, because the government, I know, spent a lot of money to ensure that the security agencies are given what they require. So if these resources are being used properly, I know that the response will be much, much better. Then if you want to look at it, that you do not need to deploy drones in some of these places where the problems are happening. there is need for us to have institutional memories. We have records of all these things that happened in the past. So if we try to go down to the records and find out what triggered the other one, and then we try to adopt a response that will be instrumental in dealing with the situation regularly. We have to be practicing, even when there is no crisis, we have to be practicing crisis response, so that when the crisis comes, we will be there at the earliest time possible to be able to stem the tide of the crisis.
All right, General Jibrin, thank you very much for your perspective. Let's get again the thoughts of Kabir Adamu. Kabir, with regard to the issues articulated by General Jibrin, what's your reaction? How do we get the security agencies, to security and intelligence agencies to be better coordinated, to respond, as well as, of course, functioning with the community influencers and leaders?
Intelligence is a function of the focus of the government. So from the point of view of determining your intelligence imperatives, it's a function of what body language does the leadership of the security agencies perceive as important to the government in place. So if we look at we're focusing on the situation in Kaduna, the governor has severally indicated his willingness to tackle this intractable security challenge in the state. Unfortunately, we haven't seen that type of response in terms of intelligence collection, and it's been clearly identified by General. Intelligence has reached a stage now in the modern era where human intelligence, HUMINT, and even open source intelligence, you'll be amazed at what you get from the open sources, and then the technical intelligence, TechInt. There are 5 phases of this, from collection to dissemination. Now, what my experience has shown in Nigeria is that unfortunately, the security department, security agencies don't really appreciate the values of the dissemination of all of this among themselves. So which brings us to the point of what kind of collaboration, harmony is there between them. Why is this important? Intelligence is supposed to preempt the happenings of like what we saw in Kaswa Magani. Now, where there is a failure of intelligence, then definitely you will be forced to react. And unfortunately, this is what I got from the speech by the Commissioner of Police from Kaduna. Most of the steps taken were reactionary, unfortunately. Now, I think there is a need to focus more on collection, especially firstly identify what the threat elements are. There are red flags, identify them, and then focus on collection. And General has listed beautifully what these collection points should be. And then more importantly, the political will to act on the recommendations by the intelligence agencies, because it's not really their function to act on them. The politicians have to have that will, and we can discuss why politicians are reluctant to actually act on recommendations that have been provided in the past.
I mean, Kabir, answer this straight away. What political will is required when you have actionable intelligence that the security agencies or law enforcement agencies can on their own proceed to deal with? Are you with me? What political will is required to prosecute you if persons have been apprehended or you are hot on the heels of the perpetrators? What political will is required? I mean, you want many more dead bodies or what? I mean,
Kingsley, it's more complex than that. Right. There are constituencies, and we can look at constituencies from the point of view of religion, from the point of view of ethnicity. Now, what action would a politician take that would automatically make a certain constituency turn their back against him? At the end of the day, he or she needs their vote. And from my experience, and the other guests can correct me if I'm wrong, this has been the major challenge, the courage for our politicians to take action that they know is right and damn the consequences, unfortunately. And remember, we're in an election period.
All right, thank you very much, Kabiru Adamu. We'll get back to you in the course of our discussion. We'll take a break now. We're still discussing the curbing the incidents and violence in parts of the country. And when we come back, we will give voices to your messages. Some of you have been tweeting us via Twitter handle. Remember, you can be a part of this conversation. If you have contributions, you have comments, you have questions for our guests, all you have to do is tweet at us at our Twitter handle at NTA GMN. When we come back, we'll take some of your tweets, so stay with us.
Oh boy, climb this thing now. Not be only to connect lights.
Come do it yourself now.
Now wow. Oh boy, calm down now. Oga Kasali electrician, who would they look for with this? Oh, Oga Kasali, come help us fix this wire now.
Sorry, I no longer carry out illegal connection. It puts the lives of people at risk and can cause fire outbreak and disrupt power supply. I will never be part of anything that has to do with this any longer because change begins with me.
Oh boy, letting him talk makes sense. Oh boy, we could carry this ladder from off.
This message is brought to you by the National Orientation Agency in conjunction with the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
It's okay, I'm okay. What happened? It's just a little scratch, Mom. How can I play with bigger boys if I'm afraid of little scratches, right?
What comforts a mother most is to see her child growing up.
Done, I'll go.
Of course. But I know that as he learns to be brave, he'll face even more germs and the risk of infection.
That's why you need Dettol protection, because Dettol protects from up to 100 illness-causing germs.
Growing up needs Dettol protection.
If you hear a bomb explosion or gunshots of an active shooter, that might be a terror attack. At such times, always remember 3 action words. Run, hide, report. Don't try to run towards the terror scene to save the situation, because there might be a second bomb blast or another attack. Run far away and take cover. Make sure you are safe first. Yes, it is in our nature to sympathize over the hurt, but remember, only trained personnel can help in such situations. When in a secured environment, promptly call relevant authorities and help will come. For anonymous reporting, call 09630-3250-5 or 0813-2222-106. If you see something, say something. Nigeria unite against terrorism. This message is brought to you by the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
All right, still good morning, Nigeria, and you're welcome back. Let's quickly take some of the tweets that we have now and then return to our guests to get their informed opinions on this subject matter. Haruna Yipmong tweets, security is paramount. There is therefore the need to eschew sentiments of all sorts in order to achieve a peaceful and egalitarian society, and our politicians should be conscientized against violence.
Sunny Michael Amakaji tweets, it says the trend of violence is scary. Borno to Benue, Kogi, Zamfara, Nasarawa, and now Kaduna, amongst others. We are one as we preach, and why don't we accept that? Why don't we accept our differences?
Scott, that's the Twitter handle for this, says weak law enforcement structures which lead to prolonged prosecution of offenders has made others get involved in violence since there are no consequences.
And this one is from Real at Real for Real. It says one major factor contributing to violence and unrest is poverty and hunger in the north. People tend to be violent when they feel that they have been abandoned. And
this is Dele Jack Solomon tweeting. Now there is a need for strict enforcement of terrorism laws, proper policing of our borders, provision of tech equipment and training of personnel, harmonization of intelligence among security agencies, among others, to combat the incessant violence and terror in Nigeria.
And this one is from Abubakar Kajoro. It said, we must think out of the box for solutions against violence, like the magnitude witnessed in Kasua Magani, which is not the first time. All right, those are the tweets that we have for now. Continue to send in your tweets. Continue to be a part of this conversation by tweeting at us at our Twitter handle at NTA GMN. Kingsley, let's go to Dr. Ochugwo, who is a research fellow at the Institute for Peace and Conflict Resolution. We're talking about the issue of intelligence here, intelligence gathering, having people. What's your take on that?
Yeah, I think an effective early warning and early response system is very, very key when you want to address issues of either crime or conflict. We can't take that out. And as the General has rightly said, early warning, early response mechanism in a given place, particularly in conflict-prone area like Kaduna, the policing style must be different. Completely. In terms of the kind of intelligence you get and the way you react to those intelligence from time in terms of taking preventive actions and all that. So an effective early warning system must be very, very key in that. And I must make bold to say that we cannot look at the violence in Kaduna and other parts of the country from basically just the prism of military security perspective. It's really not going to get us too far. If we look at it from those two perspectives, we might not be dealing with violence in Nigeria in the real sense of it. We need to revisit, very serious structural issues, within our systems that tend to promote violence and violence behavior, and as well as even within our institutions. If you go even within our institutions, even particularly within the policing institutions, you'll see that there is a tendency that prompts people to become trigger happy. Why is it so? So when we look at the structural aspect, we have to look at issues around institutional reforms. I make bold to say that we have a lot of brilliant military, security, and government workers, very, very brilliant people. But majority of them are actually frustrated on their decks in terms of knowledge not working. So we must begin to put our training and our knowledge to practice. Otherwise, those who don't have this knowledge, this intelligence, this training, they will overwhelm us because they are everywhere. Even areas where you can say they are green today in terms of violence, if you are ranking green, amber, and red. Even areas where you think they are green, they are very, very vulnerable, to issues around violence. I mean, we've heard in this country where people just travel along the road and the entire bus is taken. And the victims' families begin to negotiate with kidnappers for 1 month before they have ransom. That itself is violence. If you look at what happened in Abuja, the death of over 150 persons from scooping fuel from a broken petroleum pipeline, that itself is violence. So we must begin to address in a very holistic way, why will people, normal people, not insane people, decide to put their life on the line of violence in terms of going to scoop fuel and all that?
All right, Dr. Ochogu, thank you very much. Just before we begin to get the closing thoughts of the other guests, what would be your suggestions with regard to peace building? Because right now the curfew has been relaxed in parts of Kaduna, not entirely lifted, and there is still some restiveness. So there will be obviously short-term, mid-term, and long-term measures with regard to peace building for a society that has been bloodied the way Kaduna has been, 60 dead, and that's the confirmation.
I think basically the first short-term quick thing is confidence building, putting in an effective confidence building measure, and that should come from the state government as well as the federal government. I mean, you don't expect 50-something people to have died in a Kaswan Mageni, and then recall as well that a traditional ruler was either criminally murdered or kidnapped, and his orderly was shot and killed. Citizens interpret things in their various ways they choose to interpret, and then react the way they choose to interpret. So that is why the state, in terms of government now, must be on top of its game in terms of how it builds confidence, in terms of how it responds, to crises and all that. The state cannot wait. And the fact is that the state has all the human and material resources to deal with these issues. And that is why it's important that both the soft security and the hard security, they begin to complement each other, to address some of these things. Using just hard military security response will not really take us too far. It is only going to bring another cycle again. So we need a combination of both the soft mechanism and the hard mechanism of peace building and security management, to complement and then address some of these issues in the medium and long term as well.
All right, thank you very much. Let's go to Dr. Steve Wadu in Port Harcourt. Dr. Wadu, what would be your own recommendations with regard to peace building efforts? We know that you're joining us from Port Harcourt, and political violence in Rivers has been, of course, in the news for quite a while. What kind of measures have succeeded in Rivers that you would like to recommend, for other locations, assuming the causative factors of the violence are similar?
I would want to say that nothing has worked in Rivers State as per peace building with regards to ending the violence that is happening in Rivers State, as it is the same as across the country. The last speaker talked about military perspective, military security perspective, which is what Nigerian government and all the security sectors are interested in. But the fundamental issue of violence and conflict is related to human security. In the context of new security era, there's too much concentration on the military perspective, because the causes of the insecurity and violence we have are related to issues of human livelihood, human development, human welfare, and it is linked to poverty, penury, inequality, and all other suffering situations that Nigerians are passing through. Until we are able to handle the human development aspect of security, the military aspect of security will only be a temporary measure that can even escalate the situation. My take is that the government should begin to address the issue of development, issues of addressing poverty, growing the economy, and because poverty is at the root of all these problems, and the poverty is easily solved if the government and the state makes positive political commitments to addressing these problems. Human beings are not necessarily violent. They are provoked within the environment they found themselves. The Nigerian situation, the Nigerian economy is too harsh. People are suffering. The poverty, the privation, exclusion, and these are the things that are promoting this our identity crisis. Nigerians have lived together in the past. Nigerians have sold in the same market. There are markets you go, the Igbo man is selling, the Hausa man is bringing cow, the Igbo man is selling cow, the butchers in the market, the meat sellers are actually Igbo people. And so, but now we have a situation where intolerance, ethnic identity problem, because the basic necessities of life are not available for Nigerians. And so the problem is poverty. Until we address poverty-related conflicts, then the causes of poverty that is promoting, escalating what one of the speakers has called direct security. The direct insecurity, direct violence is a result of the human factor, the lack of development, the poverty that is happening around our society. And to that extent, people have been subjected to inhuman situations that have made them begin to, the animal instinct in man is already beginning to take over the social instinct. And that's where socialization is still important in our attempt to address violent conflicts and violent behavior amongst our citizens. So the problem actually, as I said earlier, in Rivers State, even people, chiefs in communities are being beheaded. Cult groups have sacked communities. Rural areas, people have been sacked, invaded. That's agriculture has been abandoned in Rivers State because of cult-related violence in communities. Environmental insecurity too is a threat in Rivers State. The flooding that's happening is also promoting, this kind of violent behavior. So we need to be able to understand the different segments of national security, the military perspective of security, the human dimension aspect of security that has to do with tackling poverty, tackling unemployment, and all that. Then we have to deal with the environmental kind of security, because the degradation of the environment, the disgradation, the pollution, this depollution of the environment has already, affected the livelihood support systems of different groups of people. And so people are hustling and, competing over scarce resources. So scarce conflict or resource conflict arising from scarcity is also part of what is escalating the violent behavior amongst our people. So my take is on that aspect, that if we are keen on solving the problem of insecurity, violence in Nigeria, we should address the issues around the economy, growing the economy, distributing the nation's wealth, developing political will. But our politicians are the problem. Are they willing to address these issues? Because they see it as something that does not affect them directly. But I want to say too that if you watch the trend in violence, you find out that Nigeria is getting closer to the point of what is called politicide. That is political killing. With as 2019 is coming closer, political killing and all kinds of political associations or killings that are associated with political competition will also increase, and it will also affect our politicians. The better, therefore, for them to buckle up and address these issues that are killing our people.
Thank you very much, Dr. Steve Ward. Thank you for your thoughts there. Let's quickly go to the Commissioner of Police in Kaduna State. That's the Kaduna State Command, Ibrahim Abdurrahman. Your closing thoughts, Kingsley. I know you have a question for him also.
Yeah, I have a question. The CP, Rahman, give us a sense of the extent of the curfew that has been relaxed. Because 2 days ago on Good Morning Nigeria, when we were discussing the curfew, when a 24-hour curfew was imposed, there were concerns as to what might happen to travelers from elsewhere who use Kaduna as a thoroughfare. If you're coming from Kano to Abuja, from Abuja to Kano, what alternative routes would you take? So what happens to those persons who are not resident in Kaduna and are just passing through? That's one. Secondly, how effectively are the media being utilized in Kaduna as part of the peace building and healing efforts in the course of this crisis?
And I also want you to take along with it, you know, your advice for residents of the city, those who are in Kaduna right now. What advice do you have for them? What areas have the curfew been relaxed, and what areas do you still have it 24 hours so that people can be properly informed?
That's the same thing with the first question asked. The curfew was relaxed yesterday in Kaduna Metro by about 5 hours, from 12 noon to 17:00 hours, that's 5 p.m., to allow the citizens to go out and look for some essentials of life, food, water, and other things, medicine also for their lives. And the areas that have been relaxed also, that include Kujama and Kasomageni, because the peace has been returned into those areas. So the curfew is relaxed. Instead of from dusk to dawn, from dawn to dusk, it is just limited from to 11 hours. That's from 6 a.m. to 5 p.m. to allow them continue, and we are watching to see if normalcy has returned, then the curfew will be lifted. And also, the areas that remains fully in curfew include Kabala West, Kabala Doki, Sabon Tasha, and Narai, Barnawa, because of the youths that refuse to eat that peace should return. Even that, the state government will sit, and we will give advice when we review those areas that they should relax. So the second aspect of the question, the curfew this time around had a human face, because in those days, when there is curfew, people will not follow Kaduna. But since the beginning of the curfew, we put security men on every entrance and exit of Kaduna to be escorting innocent road users and commuters, So we've never allowed the innocent citizens of Nigeria to suffer because of our problems in Kaduna. Yesterday, we even discussed at the Security Council that the state government should procure buses that will be escorting passengers from airport to every route that they wish to take, and from Kano, Abuja, from Kaduna, Kafanchan axis, from Kaduna, Brunongwari, Lagos Road, all we have done, we have agreed on that, and there are no passengers or commuters that are suffering. If you are coming to pass, we will, pedal you to go out safely. And permit me to also correct this observation made by my colleagues in the panel that I did not mention other security agencies, but I said it that here in Kaduna, that we security agencies have very good understanding, cooperation, and synergy. And that was what brought to the success of the whole operation. So therefore, the situation in Kaduna is contained because of the contribution that each and every security agency gave to the success of this operation.
Right, thank you very, very much, Ahmed Abdul Rahman, Commissioner of Police, Kaduna State Command. Thank you for joining us this morning from our Kaduna Network Center. And also, would also like to thank all of our guests who've joined us here in the studio. First of all, I'd like to thank Kabiru Adamu, who's a security risk management expert, who's always joined us when we discuss security. Thank you so much for joining us once again.
It's my pleasure.
And also Dr. Joseph Ochugo. He's a Chief Research Fellow at the Institute for Peace and Conflict Resolution. We thank you this morning for your thoughts and time.
Thank you.
From our Port Harcourt Network Center, we were joined by Dr. Steve Nwode, who's a Senior Lecturer at the Department of Sociology at the University of Port Harcourt. Doctor, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
And we have General.
Yeah.
All
right, thank you.
We'll leave him out. Or?
No, of course, we're going to thank him. General, we thank you so much for joining us this morning. We have General Ahmed Tijani Jibri. He is a former Director of Military former Director of Military Intelligence. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
All right. Well, so that does it for Good Morning Nigeria today. We'd like to thank you for tuning in. Of course, the program returns same time tomorrow at 7 o'clock, and that is in the morning. Until then, do enjoy the rest of your day. My name is Kingsley Osadolo.
And I'm Rhoda Anonam. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day.
Set me. Oh, come on, G. I beg.